Greetings and welcome to the Sunday service for the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. I am Reverend Alice Syltie, and it is my honor and pleasure to serve this congregation as minister, a congregation whose mission is to celebrate diversity, strive for justice, and inspire love. Typically, when we gather in our building, we reflect an area along the Florida Panhandle and the Alabama Gulf Coast. However, with our new way of serving congregations, we are delighted to be able to welcome you from anywhere. It's so good to be together. Welcome. Please join with me in these words from the Reverend Scott Taylor for our chalice lighting today. Let this dancing light be our guide. Let it lure us into letting go of the worries, of the stiffness that sets in after all the striving, of the myth that productivity alone gives us purpose. This garden we've been given is a playground. The weeding can wait. Let us join our voices in our church covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Greetings. I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra-Marzetti, serving as senior minister of the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm also an openly gay pastor and a dad in a multiracial family. These pandemic days that we have been navigating have really forced me, and perhaps you as well, to think deeply and well about the things that are in our circle of care. What are we bringing our attention and love to? What are we allowing in that circle of care? For me, it is an increasing awareness of how we as a human family have really deeply otherized one another and created divisions that are ultimately harming us collectively, creating harm on a large scale through the disconnecting from one another, through the blaming of one another, through the invective that we are labeling at one another. Now, this is not to say that there are not behaviors, forms of oppression that are atrocious, and those things do exist. But we have work to do ourselves within our houses of worship, within the local communities that we've chosen to belong to look carefully at how we are bringing alive our ethic, our commitment to love and care, as every denomination, every religious flavor that we can look toward calls us to do, to live into love and compassion and care for one another. Now, the times we're in, you know as well as I do, trying to universally bring that alive everywhere, that may be too lofty of a goal in these times, but certainly in the communities we've chosen to belong to, we've chosen to be there for good reason. We've found resonance. We have found ethics and an approach that deeply resonates with us, spiritual values that speak to who we are. Those are the places to begin. Those are the places to begin looking at, what does inclusivity look like here? Who isn't a part of my community but living nearby? I wonder why. I wonder why some folks don't choose to be a part of our community and choose to be parts of other communities. How can we, whoever that we is, whatever group, community it might be, how can we expand beyond who we are today to live more deeply into open-heartedness and love and care? How can we build sustained, ongoing relationships across difference? Here too, we can get caught up in trying to do the pie in the sky, the hardest thing first. How do we even just build up relationship, ongoing sustained relationship with other like-minded communities or groups or people that are committed to the same types of transformation and growth, embodiment of spiritual goodness, good-heartedness that we ourselves are? Healing the divisions across the globe or in our nation as a whole might be a very grand ideal that we continue to strive towards, and we should not lose our commitment to build better right where we are, right wherever our feet find us, whichever communities and groups we're moving within. The intersection of LGBTQIA+, the longing in that alphabet of communities to live into the fullness of dignity, equality, justice. That longing echoed in other communities throughout our nation. Black communities, Latinx communities, many other communities, often intersecting as people holding a multiplicity of identities find their way into our lives and into our local houses of worship. How do we honor that multiplicity of experience without trying to change the other person? How do we honor ourselves across difference, stepping into true authenticity, integrity, and inclusiveness? It begins with each and every one of us striving to be that presence, encouraging and inviting others close to us within group or community to live into the same. Be the transformation our culture, our society, our world needs. It rests with each and every one of us to do what we can right where we are.
Our candles represent the many joys and sorrows among our members and friends. Today, our candles reflect our thoughts for Mary Ann Hodges, Denise Gunn, Joe Vincent, and we continue to hold Chris Brockway in our thoughts and prayers. As always, There are joys and sorrows that remain in our hearts yet unspoken, and one candle glows for those. In April, the Unitarian Universalist ministers of the Southeast tried out our first hybrid gathering. Some of us were on Zoom and some of us were actually at the Mountain, our Unitarian Universalist Camp and Conference Center in North Carolina, for our annual spring gathering. Some who were vaccinated felt comfortable being together, and others, for one reason or another, were not ready to do that. So we tried it out and it worked pretty well. We could see the people at the Mountain, especially when they were in front of the camera. And if they were looking at the computer, they could see us. And of course, the presenter was doing just like I am now and being visible to all of us. April is the time of year when most ministers are beginning to feel the need for a little R&R. And so historically, our spring program tends to focus a little bit more on self-development, spiritual enrichment, even self-care, while the fall programming tends to lean more toward the rigorously academic. I say historically because it doesn't always work out that way. And over the years, I've noticed that the spring meetings have less people. I don't know if that's because they have more that's going on then, or if ministers tend to be a very serious lot. That's one of my assumptions, especially based on how serious the discussion about play became during this gathering. Our presenter was one of our very, very fine ministers, Reverend Jake Morrill, who is the minister at the Oak Ridge Unitarian Universalist Church, and he's been there for at least 18 years now. He's also a licensed therapist, and Jake is someone who seems to bring about a sense of play and a spirit of fun with people. He sings, tells stories, plays guitar, and just has a natural way of drawing people in to an atmosphere of fun and play. As someone who values play in my life and who has paid a lot of attention over the years to the importance of play, initially in the development and education of children, and later as an integral part of a life with joy to balance the sorrows and the stresses that we all encounter, this sounded interesting, possibly fun, and thoroughly appropriate, maybe even necessary for this year and a half that we have been through. So Jake started off with some interesting stories about animals playing and talked about how with dogs we can recognize by their behavior or their what I'll call body language whether they are in play mode or predator mode. The body language of play is softer and described as more curvilinear. The body language of predator is more rigid, more linear, and we tend to see bared teeth instead of a soft jaw. He mentioned scientific research that shows that play exists across all species, even fish and lizards. Biologist E.O. Wilson said ants, when they do mock battles, are engaging in play. Well, although play can be dangerous for animals, for example, mountain goats sometimes fall to their death off the cliffs as they're learning how to climb and live in the mountains. Even so, play has lasted throughout evolution, which Jake described as a merciless editor. So even though it is costly at times, it is apparently helpful overall in evolution for the species. Some animals play primarily when they're young. Some, though, play throughout their entire lifetimes. In the wolf family, only the young ones play. Older wolves are very serious. Golden Labradors, on the other hand, play throughout their lives. And within primates, a young chimpanzee will play, yet older ones only if they're coaxed into play by the younger ones. Jake claimed that humans are the golden Labradors of primates. We are wired within our brains and how we're developed, how we've developed to play our whole lives. Robert Fagan, a play researcher, studied play in many animals, especially grizzly bears in Alaska. And when pushed to answer why these bears play, he said, "In a world continuously presenting unique challenges and ambiguity, play prepares these bears for an evolving planet." Perhaps that's true for us as well. Perhaps in a world continuously presenting unique challenges and ambiguity, play prepares us for an evolving planet. Bob Fagan said conclusively that bears that played the most survived the best. About 30 years ago, the Army came up with an acronym to describe the uncertain environment that they found themselves facing. VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Perhaps some of you are familiar with that acronym. Rather than a predictable landscape where you could make your 5-year plan, stick to it, follow it, implement it, this was an uncertain environment, and it was dynamic, constantly changing. So they didn't really know how to plan, or they had a different way of planning. Businesses adopted this model that they prescribed for VUCA. And in the 20th century, other organizations, including congregations and nonprofits, did as well. I actually have never heard of that. The era of the 1950s organizational assumptions of a predictable landscape and a control-based ability to plan was believed to belong to the past. Well, if it wasn't then, it certainly seems to be now. Jake promotes the argument that play is one way we can respond. Neuroscientists who study the brain and play have put forth that people or animals who play have more complexity and adaptability in access to their emotions and more textured capacity with executive functioning or thinking. These certainly sound like good tools for navigating uncertainty. It made me think and feel grateful for the thoughtful and considered way that we are approaching our future planning, our strategic planning, as we prepare for a church in a world that has definitely thrown us a curveball in the last year. So, now that we have decided that play is important, what exactly is play? Dr. Stuart Brown and other play researchers have resisted pinning it down because, like beauty, they say it is meant to be elusive. Finally, though, they agreed to give some language for a definition. First of all, they said, play needs to be a choice. People need to choose voluntarily to play. Mandatory fun is a contradiction. Play is purposeless. There's an inherent attraction. Play gives a freedom from time. A person is immersed in the experience. There's a diminished conscience of self and an improvisational potential. People want to keep on playing. So now that we have something of a definition, what kind of play attracts you? There are lots of different kinds of play, and there are also play personalities. I'll start with the types of play. And these are according to Dr. Stuart Brown, who founded the National Institute for Play. Each of these types of play accomplishes different benefits. There are 7. Attunement play is the early building blocks for all forms of play. This happens when you are playing peekaboo with the baby or cooing and looking in the eyes of the baby. It establishes an emotional connection with the infant. It not only helps with object permanence, it helps build awareness and foster happiness. When you smile and coo happily at your baby, the baby learns to mimic your expressions and eventually smiles back and begins to vocalize as well. The baby is attuned to you. Body play and movement. Body play and movement is largely a way for children to develop a spatial understanding of themselves and the world around them. Leaping in the air teaches us the effects of gravity. Dance teaches us the various ways that our bodies can move. Object play. Playing with toys and objects develops problem-solving skills. Animal researchers developed a test to determine intelligence among ravens. They put food on a string and suspended it from a branch. The ravens began to gather the string using their claws and beaks until the food was in their grasps. Object play is similar in that it allows children to explore the functions of objects and develop tools. Social play. One of the most complex forms of play, social play, helps children establish social norms. As our children engage in group play, they develop the interpersonal skills that will help them have successful friendships and relationships as adults. Imaginative and pretend play. Who hasn't either had or seen a child who has an imaginary friend? I remember one time when my daughter was coming in the door and she turned around and said to this imaginary person, "Wait right there." And then she came in the kitchen for lunch. This kind of play is the birthplace of creativity. Whether a child is playing house or hosting a tea party, this child is developing their own inner story and an understanding of their place in the world. The next is storytelling or narrative play. Children love it when you read them a story, in the same way that adults enjoy watching Netflix. And while both of these activities have an element of fantasy, it also helps both children and adults gain an understanding of both ourselves and of others. Creative play, creating music, brainstorming, these playful situations tap into our creative juices that are developed during pretend play and extract finished ideas that add function and progress to our lives. I always enjoy brainstorming new ideas with a group of people because it is playful and it does give us the most creative results. While some of us have a strong preference to a certain type of play, most of us have a mix of a few different play personalities. So here are some of the play personalities. The Joker. The Joker's play revolves around silliness and making others laugh. Jokers tend to be the class clown in school and may engage in play through telling jokes, doing funny impersonations, or playing practical jokes. Now, we would get very serious in our discussion about play if we were talking about practical jokes because somebody else is involved who did not choose to be usually. So that's a way that play can sometimes not be so good. And it turns out there are a number of those, but I'm not really going there too much today. But you all probably have experiences of being dragged into some kind of play that you did not find fun or interesting and you did not enjoy it. The kinesthetes are people who play through movement. They get pleasure from movement and feeling the result of physically pushing their bodies. While this category might include athletes, competition is not the main focus. The joy of engaging in the activity takes precedence. Kinesthetes might play in the form of running, dancing, some sports, yoga, swimming, hiking, or walking. The next is the explorer. The explorer is enthusiastic about and engages in play by exploring the world around them. The explorer's play can be physical, like going to new places, emotional, search for a deepening of emotion through music or art or movement, or mental, researching a new area of interest or reading a book. The competitor engages in play through competitive games with specific rules and enjoys the thrill of winning. The games can be solitary, such as trying to beat one's own record, or competing in team sports. Competitors may also play through observing and being a fan of competitive sports. The director. The director engages in play through planning and executing events. They are organizers of the social world and may be the instigators of a weekend up north or throwing a party. I have a friend who really enjoys planning travel, and I travel with her frequently. And I love that she likes to look up which museums we need to go see and figure out what time the trains will pick us up or which subway station we need to get to. And we've been to Europe together a few times, and I'm more than happy to let her plan, and because I'm going to enjoy whatever we do. The collector. The collector plays through engaging in seeking and holding on to the most, best, and most interesting collection of objects and experiences. They experience bliss in finding a new piece, experience, organizing, or showing off their collection. The collector may be interested in coins, purses, shoes, cars, or photographs. I happen to collect shells and have for so many years. I can't tell you how many boxes of shells are hidden around in my house. The artist creator. The artist creator plays through creating and making things. The artist creator may engage in drawing, building or sculpting, painting, singing, knitting, gardening, woodworking, or any number of creative endeavors. The artist-creator may also take joy in fixing or making something work, like taking apart a broken item and cleaning and replacing the parts and putting it back together again. The storyteller. The storyteller engages in play through adventure into the imagination. They may enjoy reading novels, writing, or watching movies or theater. Storytellers enjoy being immersed in a story, experiencing the thoughts and emotions of the characters in the stories. Did you find yourself in there somewhere? I certainly had a few. In a blog by Dr. Brown that caught my attention during this time of COVID-19 vaccinations, he talked about play as a type of vaccination, saying a regular dose of play has immeasurable health benefits. This was not at all to downplay the importance of medical vaccines. He lived before antibiotics and was friends with Dr. Salk, who discovered the polio vaccine. Dr. Brown described Dr. Salk's openness to also finding ways of altering violent or destructive human behaviors, which was an interest to Dr. Stuart Brown as well. In a well-known court case in 1966, Texas Governor John Connally took personal interest in solving the mystery of why Charles Whitman, known as the Texas Tower Sniper, committed mass murder. He assembled an expert international team to search for causes from Charles Whitman's life. Dr. Stuart Brown, a psychiatrist at Baylor College of Medicine at the time, and later who founded the National Institute for Play, compiled the behavioral data from this team. He wrote, "The committee investigating Charles Whitman's life and motives unanimously identified his lifelong lack of play as a key factor in his homicidal actions." If you read what's kind of a tragic life story of Charles Whitman, you'll understand the lack of play. I leave you with these words from Dr. Brown's blog on play vaccinations. Getting oneself into this play-based, different from all others state of being is the play vaccination goal. Maybe daily or even hourly, get there as often as you can. What is it that lights your candle? And the well-being benefits, despite the pandemic's grip on whatever the quality of life will be, at least for a time, will be loosened. And the other benefits of play, empathy, optimism, an increased sense of vitality, will, with the pleasurable repetition that play fosters, be more and more yours. This is what nature has offered us to cope with the inevitable travail of being in this world that can throw us the curveballs of pandemics and more. Play on.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on.
The offering is a symbol of the free church. It is only through the generosity of our friends and members that this church survives and thrives. So I share now with you the information for how to text and give or write a check to the church. And as always, we thank you for the many ways that you support this church and its mission. Join me in words to extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.